She lost her journal at a winery, never knowing the millionaire who found it would fall in love with her. A headline that seemed ripped from one of those gossip magazines Emily Hayes despised, but which now perfectly described the chaos her life had become. Emily never imagined that a simple, brown leather journal filled with all her secrets, plans, and skills would fall into the hands of the most intimidating and fascinating man she had ever met. Much less that this disastrous encounter between glasses of wine and furtive glances would change the course of her existence forever. Emily sighed as she swirled the red wine in her glass, watching the ruby liquid create a small vortex. Serene Valley Vineyards just outside Sausalito was a rarity, an oasis of tranquility just 40 minutes from the chaos of San Francisco. The late afternoon sun illuminated the vineyards, creating a golden spectacle that looked like something out of a painting. Merlot 2019, the house's special vintage, explained the sommelier. A gentleman with gray hair and a kind smile, notes of black cherry with a subtle hint of oak. Emily, a 32-year-old marketing analyst, understood absolutely nothing about wine. She was only there because her best friend Sarah had practically dragged her to the tasting, promising it would be a transformative experience. And now, Sarah was off somewhere, chatting animatedly with the winery owner, leaving Emily alone with her glass and her journal. The journal, the small brown leather book she carried everywhere. It wasn't just an appointment calendar. It was a diary, a confidant, a repository of dreams, random notes, and thoughts she would never dare share with anyone. In the digital age, Emily was an anomaly with her physical journal and her tiny, organized handwriting. "You don't look very convinced." A deep, melodious voice sounded behind her, making her nearly drop her glass. When she turned, she was momentarily speechless. The man was tall, with broad shoulders that fit perfectly into a casual navy blazer. He had an angular face with a well-trimmed beard framing a discreet smile. But it was his eyes that captured her, a deep brown that seemed to hold 1,000 untold stories. "Pardon?" Emily managed to stammer, hating herself for sounding so flustered. "The wine," he clarified, tilting his head slightly. "You seem to be analyzing it like it's a complicated math equation, not a drink to be enjoyed." Emily felt her face heat up. "Is it that obvious I'm a complete novice?" The stranger smiled, a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Let's just say you don't have that pretentious look of someone about to lecture on tobacco notes and a persistent finish." This drew a genuine laugh from her. "Cut me some slack. I just learned what a Merlot is exactly 10 minutes ago." "William Sinclair," he introduced himself, extending his hand. "Emily Hayes," she replied, feeling a strange tingle as their hands touched. The conversation flowed with surprising ease. William had a relaxed way of explaining wine without sounding pedantic. Emily discovered he knew wineries from several countries but had a special fondness for Californian productions. What he didn't mention, and she had no way of knowing, was that he owned one of the largest cattle ranches in the country and a fortune estimated in the hundreds of millions. "And you? What do you do for a living besides being dragged to wine tastings?" he asked with genuine interest. "Digital marketing. Nothing nearly as exciting as..." Sarah's shrill voice interrupted the conversation. We have to go. A work emergency just came up." Emily looked at her watch, surprised to see that nearly 2 hours had passed. With a hurried apology, she grabbed her purse and followed her friend, leaving behind, without realizing, the small brown leather journal on the tasting table. William Sinclair, the reserved millionaire rancher who rarely took an interest in strangers, watched her leave with the strange feeling that something important had just begun. When he noticed the forgotten journal, he didn't hesitate to pick it up. Was it just an excuse to see her again? Or did fate have more elaborate plans for two strangers who met over glasses of wine? What William didn't imagine was that later that night, as he idly opened the first few pages of the forgotten journal, he would find not just appointments and notes, but an underlined sentence that would change his perspective forever. "Some days, all I want is to be seen for who I really am, not for what I appear to be. Emily." Nearly spilled her coffee on her keyboard when the email notification popped up. "Your journal has been found." Her heart hammered as she clicked the email. From an unknown sender, Ms. Hayes. "I believe I found something that belongs to you. A small brown leather journal with your name and contact information on the first page. If you are still interested in retrieving it, We can meet at the Noble Bean Cafe near the winery tomorrow at 3 p.m. Sincerely, William Sinclair. Emily felt her stomach drop. Her journal, in the hands of that fascinating stranger from the winery, the journal that contained not only appointments, but intimate thoughts, fears, dreams, and even that ridiculous men to avoid list, where she'd outlined every type of man who had disappointed her in recent years. For the love of God, please tell me you didn't write anything embarrassing in that prehistoric diary of yours, Sarah commented, reading the email over Emily's shoulder. Define embarrassing, Emily replied, burying her face in her hands. Because if it includes all my personal ramblings, conspiracy theories about my boss, and that terrible poem I wrote after breaking up with Ben, then yes. I'm completely ruined, Sarah laughed. Look on the bright side. At least the guy who found it is gorgeous. A gorgeous guy who now knows all my secrets, Emily moaned. I'm going to have to move. Maybe Iceland is far enough away. Despite the drama, Emily replied to the email confirming the meeting. The next day, she arrived at the cafe 20 minutes early, a habit she couldn't control no matter how hard she tried. The Noble Bean was cozy, with dark wood tables and an aroma that perfectly justified its name. When William walked in, punctually at 3 p.m., Emily almost didn't recognize him. He was wearing jeans and a simple t-shirt, looking more approachable and less intimidating than the day before. Emily. He greeted her with a smile that seemed genuine. Chance encounters don't usually happen twice. Technically, this isn't by chance, she replied, trying to control her nerves. You're here to return something I hope you haven't explored too deeply. William sat across from her, placing the journal on the table. His fingers hovered over the brown leather for an instant before he slid it toward her. I must confess I opened it to confirm who it belonged to, he said with an enigmatic expression, and I saw your name and contact info on the first page. Emily felt herself blush. And that's all you saw? His eyes met hers with unnerving intensity. It would be unethical to read someone's diary without permission, don't you think? A sigh of relief escaped her lips. So you didn't... I said it would be unethical, William interrupted, a mysterious smile playing at the corners of his mouth. I didn't say I resisted the temptation. The world seemed to freeze around Emily. How much did you read? Enough to know you have a surprising imagination and a peculiar talent for describing people, he replied, leaning forward slightly. And especially in your, what was it? The Definitive List of Men to Avoid at All Costs 2023 edition. Emily wished the floor would open up and swallow her. The list. That damn list she had compiled after a night of cheap wine with Sarah, categorizing all the types of men who had passed through her life, leaving emotional scars. I particularly, William continued, seeming to enjoy her discomfort, found your description of type 4, the bored heir, fascinating. What was it? Men who have never had to work for anything in their lives and treat relationships like temporary hobbies. Emily snatched the journal with a sharp movement, stuffing it into her bag as if it were radioactive. That is an invasion of privacy. Indisputably, he agreed, without seeming remotely sorry. But it made me curious. What category would you put me in? The question caught her off guard. I barely know you. Exactly. Which is why I'm here, William replied, surprising her. To change that. There was a moment of charged silence where the clatter of cups and surrounding conversations seemed to fade. Why? Emily finally asked. You've read my most private thoughts. You know I'm a complete emotional disaster with a ridiculous list of men to avoid. What could possibly interest you? William studied her for a moment, as if deciding something important. The sentence on the third page, he said finally, about wanting to be seen for who you really are. Emily blinked, immediately recognizing the reference. A vulnerability she had exposed only to herself, now discovered by a stranger. I understand that feeling, he added softly. More than you know. Before Emily could process what was happening, he continued. How about a deal? A real date. No forgotten journals, no predefined lists. Just two people getting to know each other. You're asking me out after invading my privacy? I'm asking you out because what I saw intrigued me, he corrected, and because I think you're curious about me too. Emily should have refused. It was the sensible decision, but there was something in those brown eyes, something that suggested depth she had not yet explored. One date, she agreed finally, and after that, if I decide you fit into one of my avoid categories, you disappear from my life. William's smile widened. Deal, but be prepared to rewrite your list. What Emily didn't know was that while she struggled with her own exposed vulnerability, William carried far greater secrets. Secrets that could completely change the way she saw him. And as they left the cafe, each going their own way with the promise of a future meeting, fate was already weaving its threads, entangling the lives of two people who, behind their carefully constructed facades, shared the same deep desire to finally find someone who saw beyond appearances. The restaurant William chose for their date was nothing like Emily had expected. No extravagant or pretentious places. Instead, he took her to a small, family-run establishment on the outskirts of Sausalito, where the chef, an older man of Italian origin, greeted William like an old friend. "Mr. Sinclair! It's been too long." The man hugged William with genuine affection. "And I see you've brought special company this time." "Lorenzo, this is Emily." William introduced her with a discreet smile. "Emily, this is the man responsible for the best risotto you will ever taste in your life." As they were led to a table in the back, overlooking a small garden lit by fairy lights, Emily watched William with growing curiosity. He interacted with the staff with respect and familiarity, a far cry from the posture she would have imagined from someone with his presence. "You come here often," she commented, not as a question, but as a statement. William nodded, unfolding his napkin onto his lap. "This place reminds me of my childhood. Simple food made with care and no pretense." "Your childhood?" Emily repeated, savoring this small crumb of personal information. "I bet you grew up in one of those magazine cover mansions with butlers and Olympic-sized pools." A flash of something, sadness, amusement, crossed his face. "Not exactly. I grew up on a small ranch in rural Montana. My father raised a few head of cattle, but we lived on the basics." Emily blinked, surprised. "That's not what I was expecting." "Let me guess." He tilted his head slightly, a habit she'd already noticed. "In your journal, you had already categorized me as type 4, the bored heir." She felt her face flush. "I didn't categorize you, but I made assumptions." "As you did when you read my journal," she countered, raising an eyebrow. William smiled, accepting the hit. "Fair enough. So how about we start over? No assumptions, no predefined categories." The night flowed with surprising ease. William told her how he had inherited the small ranch from his father and, through hard work and some smart decisions, turned it into one of the largest ranching enterprises in the country. Emily shared her frustrations with the digital marketing world, where creativity was often sacrificed for algorithms. It was when dessert arrived, a tiramisu that Lorenzo insisted they try, that the conversation took an unexpected turn. "So, what's your biggest fear?" William asked abruptly, watching her with those penetrating eyes. Emily nearly choked on her coffee. "Is this your idea of light first date conversation? We're past social conventions, don't you think?" "I've read your secret lists," he smiled, but there was an underlying seriousness in his gaze. "I'm trying to see beyond your perfectly constructed facade, Emily Hayes." She toyed with her spoon, contemplating how to answer. "My biggest fear is discovering that I've spent my whole life trying to fit into expectations that aren't even mine." His eyes softened. "Go on." "I'm 32. According to the grand life script they sell us, I should have an established career, maybe a marriage, plans for kids." She shrugged. "Instead, I still feel lost half the time, doing a job I'm not passionate about while collecting disastrous dates with men who end up on my avoid lists." William studied her for a moment. "And what would your ideal script be if you could rewrite everything?" The question caught her off guard. No one had ever asked her that before. I've always wanted to write." She hesitated. "Not marketing reports or metric analyses, but stories. Novels, maybe. Something that touches people in a way numbers on a spreadsheet never can." "And why don't you?" Emily laughed, a humorless sound. "Because I have bills to pay. Because it's a naive dream. Because I'm afraid to try and find out I'm not good enough." "Ah, so your biggest fear isn't what you said before," William commented softly. "It's failure." Those words hit Emily like a punch to the stomach. He was right, she realized. Behind all her elaborate justifications, the fear of failure was what kept her trapped in an uncomfortable comfort zone. Your turn. She deflected, feeling suddenly vulnerable. What's the biggest fear of the successful Mr. Sinclair? William was silent for so long that Emily thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice had a different quality, lower, rawer. My biggest fear is that in the end, everything I've built won't mean anything, that I'll only be remembered as a number in a bank account, not as a person who made a difference. Emily felt something shift between them in that moment, an invisible barrier crumbling. How can someone who raises and sells cattle on a large scale feel like they aren't making a difference? She asked, genuinely curious. You literally feed people. An enigmatic smile played on his lips. There's more to my life than cattle, Emily. Much more. Before she could ask what he meant, William's phone vibrated. He glanced at the screen, and a shadow crossed his face. I need to take this, he said, already standing up. Excuse me. Emily watched as he stepped out into the garden, his posture shifting subtly as he spoke on the phone. There was a tension in his shoulders that hadn't been there before. When he returned minutes later, something had changed. The relaxed, open William from moments ago had been replaced by someone more reserved. Is everything okay? She asked. A situation. With one of my businesses? He replied vaguely. Nothing you need to worry about. But Emily sensed something was wrong. And for the first time since she'd met him, she saw a crack in William Sinclair's perfectly controlled facade of vulnerability that, strangely, made him even more intriguing. The rest of the night proceeded at a different pace, with more superficial conversation. When William dropped her off at her apartment, there was a distance between them that hadn't existed during dinner. Thank you for the evening, Emily said, standing at her door. It was revealing. William smiled, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. Thank you, and I apologize for the abrupt ending. She wanted to ask what had happened, what that call meant, but she felt it wasn't the time. Can I see you again? He asked, surprising her. Emily hesitated. There was something about William Sinclair that both fascinated and frightened her. He was complex, full of layers she had only just begun to scratch the surface of. Yes, she replied finally, but next time, I picked the place. When he leaned in to kiss her, it was a soft, almost hesitant kiss. A kiss that promised more but also held secrets. And as Emily closed the door behind her, she couldn't stop thinking that there was something about William Sinclair he wasn't telling her. Something that could change everything between them. What she didn't know was that very night, William was facing a crisis that threatened not only his business but potentially his freedom. And that the fear he had shared with her of not making a difference was about to be tested in ways neither of them could predict. 3 days passed with no word from William. Emily alternated between worry, irritation, and a forced attempt at indifference that didn't even fool herself. On the morning of the 4th day, as she was sipping coffee at her small kitchen counter, her phone buzzed with a notification. Oh my God! Sarah practically shouted from the other end of the line. Have you seen what's happening? It's all over the news. What are you talking about? Emily asked, still half asleep. Your handsome wine guy, William Sinclair. He's being investigated for alleged involvement in an illegal land development scheme in the Pacific Northwest. They're saying he used shell companies to buy protected wilderness areas and clear-cut them for cattle grazing. Emily felt as if she'd been punched in the stomach. She quickly opened her laptop and typed in William's name. The headlines exploded on the screen. Cattle tycoon under investigation. William Sinclair accused of environmental crimes. Ranching empire built on illegal deforestation. DOJ investigates land grab scheme involving agribusiness man. The photos. William leaving a federal building surrounded by lawyers, his normally serene face now marked by tension. Emily felt the world spin. Was this what the phone call at the restaurant was about? Was this why he had shut down so abruptly? Are you okay? Sarah's worried voice brought Emily back to reality. I don't know, she answered honestly. I need to process this. After hanging up, Emily sat motionless, staring at the headlines. Something didn't add up. The William she had met, who spoke with such passion about his humble origins, about making a difference. Could he be capable of destroying a forest for profit? Was the man who made her question her own fears and aspirations truly the villain the newspapers described? The phone rang again. Unknown number. Emily. William's voice sounded different, exhausted, tense. Why didn't you tell me? She asked immediately, surprised by the hurt in her own voice. a heavy sigh on the other end. It's not what it looks like. Can I see you? I need to explain. In person. All logic told her to stay away, to not get involved with a man under federal investigation whose name was being dragged through the mud. But there was something in his voice. Desperation, yes, but also a sincerity she couldn't ignore. Where? Was all she asked. An hour later, Emily met him in a quiet park on the outskirts of Sausalito. He looked like he had aged years in just a few days. Deep, dark circles, stubble, his shoulders slumped under the weight of invisible worries. Thank you for coming, he said simply as she sat next to him on the bench. Explain, Emily demanded. Without preamble, William ran a hand through his disheveled hair. The accusations are partially true. Land in the Northwest was bought using shell companies and converted to pasture. But they weren't my orders. Whose then? My partner, Marcus Vance. We've been partners for years. He handles territorial expansion while I manage production and sales. William looked directly into her eyes. I found out what was happening 3 months ago. That phone call at the restaurant, it confirmed the investigation had reached us. Emily tried to absorb it all. And you didn't know before? How is that possible? Marcus kept everything in a parallel system. He used our name, our reputation, but hid the origin of the new properties. William's voice wavered. I was negligent, Emily. I should have checked. I should have questioned how we were expanding so quickly. The blame is mine too, for omission. And now I'm cooperating with the authorities, handing over everything I know, every document I could gather. But my name, he swallowed hard. My name and everything I've built is going to crumble. Decades of honest work stained by a terrible error in judgment. Emily studied his face, searching for signs of a lie, of manipulation. But all she saw was a broken man facing the consequences of trusting the wrong person. Why are you telling me this? Why do you care what I think? William looked at her with a vulnerability that completely disarmed her. Because that night at the restaurant, for the first time in years, I felt seen for who I really am. Not as a successful businessman or the name in the papers, just as me. The words echoed the ones Emily had written in her journal. Her deepest desire to be truly seen. What's going to happen now? She asked softly. I'm going to lose a lot. Most of my business, certainly. My reputation, definitely. I might still face criminal charges, though my lawyers think my cooperation will make a difference. He gave a sad smile. That fear I shared with you about not making a difference? Now I have a chance to make the right difference, even if it costs me everything. Emily felt something shift inside her. The man in front of her wasn't perfect. Far from it. He had been negligent, too trusting, had closed his eyes to signs he should have seen. But now, he was facing the consequences. Taking responsibility. Trying to fix what could be fixed. What can I do? She asked, surprising them both. William blinked, confused. You want to help? After all this? How? I'm not saying I approve of what happened, Emily clarified, or that I fully understand your role in it, but... She hesitated, searching for the right words. I believe in second chances, in redemption. And if you are truly committed to doing the right thing now, I want to be by your side. A single tear traced a path down William's face. Why? You barely know me? Most people are running from me like I have a contagious disease. Emily touched his face gently, surprising herself with the gesture. Maybe because I saw something in you at that restaurant? Something beyond the businessman, beyond the headlines. And also, she hesitated, because I know what it's like to be judged before you've had a chance to tell your story. That afternoon in the park marked the beginning of something neither of them had planned. In the weeks that followed, as the legal process unfolded, Emily became not just a supportive presence in William's life, but a voice of reason and hope. She helped him organize documents, prepare public statements, and most importantly, not lose faith in himself when everything seemed to be falling apart. The scandal, as expected, destroyed much of the empire William had built. Most contracts were canceled, investors pulled out, and the press turned him into the perfect villain, the greedy tycoon sacrificing the wilderness for profit. But away from the spotlight, another story was unfolding. With guidance from his lawyers and Emily's unwavering support, William did more than just cooperate with the authorities. He sold off legitimate properties to create a substantial fund dedicated to reforestation projects in the affected areas. He sought out respected environmental organizations, not to clear his name, but to understand how he could genuinely repair the damage caused. "You didn't have to go this far," Emily commented one night, as she reviewed the environmental recovery plan he had proposed to the DOJ. "Your lawyers said the cooperation and some smaller financial settlements would be enough." William looked up from the documents, his gaze meeting hers with an intensity that still made her lose her breath. "I'm not doing this for the legal process, Emily. I'm doing it because it's the right thing to do, because I want to be able to look myself in the mirror again." It was in that moment that Emily realized she had fallen in love with him. Not with the man she'd met at the winery, confident, charming, untouched by adversity, but with this William, imperfect, fighting for redemption, finding the strength to rebuild not just his life, but something bigger than himself. What she didn't know was that William still held one last secret, a secret that could change everything between them, and it was about to come out. The final hearing at the federal prosecutor's office was scheduled for a rainy Tuesday. Emily nervously adjusted the collar of her blazer as she waited outside the conference room. William had been in there for almost 2 hours, finalizing the terms of the cooperation agreement that would determine his future. "It's going to be okay." Sarah, who had insisted on coming with her, squeezed her hand in solidarity. "He did everything he could." Emily nodded, but the knot in her stomach only tightened. Over the past 2 months, her life had completely transformed. What had started as a casual meeting at a winery had become an emotional roller coaster that led her to question everything she believed about relationships, about second chances, about herself. "He asked me to move in with him," Emily confessed suddenly, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. Sarah's eyes widened. "What? When?" "Last night." Emily sighed, remembering the conversation. "He said no matter the outcome today, he wants to start over. With me. And you said?" "I said I needed to think." Emily ran her fingers through her hair, frustrated. "It's all so fast, Sarah, and there's still so much uncertainty. How can I make a decision like that when I don't even know if he'll be a free man tomorrow?" Before Sarah could reply, the doors to the conference room opened. Lawyers and officials began to file out, followed by William, whose face was impossibly hard to read. Emily stood up, her heart pounding. When his eyes met hers, something in his expression shifted, an almost imperceptible softening of the tension. "So?" she asked when he finally approached. "Deal's done. No prison time." He paused, taking a deep breath. "A significant fine, obligation to fully fund the recovery of the areas, and 5 years of commercial restrictions in the agribusiness sector." "You're free," Emily whispered, the reality finally setting in. A tired smile transformed William's face. "Free, but practically broke. The Sinclair empire is officially reduced to almost nothing." "But you still have the original ranch, right? The one that was your father's?" "Yes, that one no one can take. That's where I'm going now. To start from scratch." He hesitated, his eyes searching hers. "My offer still stands, Emily. Come with me." Sarah cleared her throat dramatically. "I think you two need privacy. I'll be outside, pretending I'm not desperate to know the end of this movie." When they were alone, Emily felt the full magnitude of the decision she had to make. To leave her job, her life in Sausalito, to follow a man she'd known for only a few months. To a ranch in the middle of Montana. It was crazy. It was impulsive. It was exactly the kind of thing the old Emily would never have considered. "Before you answer," William said softly, "there's something I need to tell you. Something I've been putting off." Emily's heart skipped a beat. "More secrets?" "What I found in your journal that first day," he said, his eyes never leaving hers. "It wasn't just that sentence about being seen. It was a manuscript, an entire chapter of a novel you were writing." Emily froze. The novel. Her secret project, which she had never shared with anyone. Pages and pages hidden between appointments and lists, written in stolen moments between meetings and deadlines. "You read it." William nodded slowly. "I read it. And it was like someone had opened a window into your soul, Emily. Those words, the way you described the characters, their fears, their hopes. That's when I knew I had to really get to know you. But why didn't you say anything before?" "At first, I didn't know how to bring it up. Then, when everything fell apart with the scandal, it seemed irrelevant." He took a step forward, closing the distance between them. But now, about to ask you to change your life for me, I realized I needed to be completely honest. Emily felt tears forming. Her novel, her most intimate words, they had been the real beginning of it all. And there's more, William continued, his voice almost a whisper. While you were helping me with the case documents, I sent your manuscript to a friend who works at a publishing house. I didn't use your name. I just asked her to read it. Emily's eyes widened. You did what? She wants to publish it, Emily. She said it's one of the most authentic new voices she's found. William pulled an envelope from the inside pocket of his jacket. Here's her contact info and the preliminary terms she proposed. The decision is yours, of course. Emily took the envelope with trembling hands, unable to process what was happening. Her novel, a publishing offer, the chance to live the dream she had mentioned that night at the restaurant. Why would you do this for me? She asked, her voice thick with emotion. William gently held her face between his hands. Because I love you, Emily Hayes. I love your brutal honesty, your unexpected compassion, your strength when everything falls apart. I even love your ridiculous men to avoid lists. His gaze grew more intense. And if we're going to start over together, I want it to be with you following your own dreams, not just mine. There, in the hallway of a federal building, surrounded by the buzz of lawyers and officials, Emily made her decision, not based on carefully categorized lists or social expectations, but on what her heart told her was true. Yes, she said simply, I'll come with you. The kiss that sealed that promise was different from all the others. There was no hesitation, no secrets, no fear. Just two people who had seen the best and worst of each other and had chosen to stay. 6 months later, the old farmhouse on the Sinclair Ranch had been transformed. One of the bedrooms was now Emily's office, where she worked on her second novel while the revised version of her first was about to be released. In the renovated barn, William was implementing a pilot project for sustainable ranching, seeking to prove that it was possible to raise cattle without devastating the environment. It wasn't the life Emily had imagined for herself. It was infinitely better. And every morning, when she woke up next to William and watched the sun rise over the green fields, she thought about the irony of how it all began. A lost journal in a winery, a millionaire who was no longer a millionaire, and two hearts that, against all odds, found exactly what they needed in each other. Epilogue. Serene Valley Vineyards was especially beautiful on that autumn afternoon. The vines, heavy with ripe grapes, created a carpet of green and purple under the orange twilight sky. The sound of clinking glasses and soft laughter filled the air. I find it hard to believe it's been exactly 2 years, Emily commented, swirling the wine in her glass, just as she had the day she met William. He smiled, his eyes shining in the golden sunset light. The lines around his eyes had deepened in recent years, but somehow it only made him more handsome in her eyes. 2 years since you forgot your journal, and I made the grave ethical error of reading it, he teased, lacing his fingers through hers. The best mistake anyone ever made, she replied with a smile. So much had changed since that first meeting. Emily's Lost Pages novel had become a surprising success, translated into 3 languages and with a streaming adaptation in negotiation. William hadn't recovered his fortune, but his model farm for sustainable ranching now hosted researchers and students from all over the country, becoming a case study in environmental regeneration and business ethics. I have something for you, William said, pulling a small package from his pocket. Emily raised her eyebrows, intrigued. It's not our wedding anniversary yet. It's a gift to celebrate 2 years since I was lucky enough to find a forgotten journal. She opened the package carefully, revealing a small brown leather journal, almost identical to the original. Open it, he urged softly. On the first page, there was only one sentence written in William's strong, slanted handwriting. For Emily, who taught me that sometimes we lose something small to find something so much bigger. With all my love, William. And below, hidden in a secret compartment of the cover, was a small envelope. Inside it, the deed to Serene Valley Vineyards, now in the name of Emily Hayes Sinclair. William, she gasped, her eyes wide. How? You can't have. I can, and I did, he replied with a serene smile. It took time, negotiations, and some of our profits from the ranch project, but it's done. The place where it all began is now yours. Silent tears streamed down Emily's face. Ours, she corrected softly. It's ours. There, among the vines where they had first met, they sealed another promise with a kiss. It wasn't a happy ending. It was just another chapter in a story that continued to be written, page by page, day by day. And somewhere, kept safe in a memory box at their home on the ranch, the original journal remained, a reminder of how one small lost object could change the destiny of two people forever.